This is a leap day community call that we're doing for this launch day. Exciting that we're doing this on the 29th of February. Hey folks, welcome to everybody that is here today. My name is Rob. I am an engineer at Hasura, and I'm the host for the community call. Let me go ahead and share my screen with all of you folks. As always, we have a very packed agenda for you with a lot of things that are going on and a lot of great improvements that have been happening between our alpha and upcoming beta release that is right around the corner for Hasura DDN and Hasura V3. As always, we have a packed agenda for you, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into the very first item that we have, which are going to be performance and DX improvements for our language server protocol, or LSP. So before I show the video for this, we're going to go ahead and bring Rishi up on the stage. So Rishi, would you like to go ahead and join us, please?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Really excited
Yeah.
to show the LSP improvements. Let's go.
All right, cool. So anything you want to go ahead and highlight for us before we jump into the video for this?
Yes, a quick note that this is a sneak peek into the work that's going to come out very soon. So yeah, stay tuned for the release. It's not released yet is what I'd say. Yeah.
All right, excellent.
Hey folks, my name is Rishi. I work in the developer experience team at Hasura. And today's demo will be about improvements to the language server that we did over the past couple weeks, couple months. For those who haven't followed the Hasura DDN alpha release, a quick introduction. So Hasura DDN helps you build a supergraph. A supergraph is a unified GraphQL API federated over different subgraphs, where each subgraph is an independent data domain managed and deployed independently. So briefly, the supergraph has metadata and it's written in HML, which is the Hasura metadata language. HML is an extension of YAML and just with a few more cool features. It also comes with its LSP, language server, which is backed by the Microsoft's language server protocol, right? And that's what my demo is going to be about today. So let's open this DDN project in VSCode. If you see, there are a bunch of HTML files here. There's e-commerce db.html, costs json-db.html. These are data connectors which are connected to actual data sources. This is connected to an e-commerce Postgres database, and this is connected to a costs JSON DB. This is just a DB that I've come up with. Right. Before we get into the improvements, let's bring in two models from the e-commerce DB so that we can work with that. I'll be using LSP code actions. By the way, LSP powers a bunch of features in HML. That is the code actions, go to definition, the auto-completion help, validation errors, those squigglies, warnings, and things like that. So I'll bring in the orders model in my metadata. And if you see, the orders model has been brought in, and its permissions also. And its object type, the types related to this model, I can just jump to it using the go to definition feature. Yeah, I have brought in the orders model, and I'll also bring in the products model. This helps us bring models from our data sources into the metadata automatically, right? Now, coming to the first improvement, we have added a lot of enrichments to the auto-completion experience so that you can write the metadata seamlessly. The gist of these auto-completion improvements is that help shall be granted if you ask for it, just like at Hogwarts. So whenever you are stuck at Hasura metadata, you can just hit command space and you can see suggestions, right, with the documentation. So say if you want to add a command, a mutation kind of command, you can just hit enter and that will auto fill in a snippet for command, and then you can just write name and move on. Similarly with the query type command, I'll try to demonstrate this with a relationship. So I want to create a relationship between the two models, orders and products, that I just brought in. So again, I go to the snippets, relationship to command to model. I'll select relationship to model, And then I can just fill in these values and my relationship is ready. Relationship name, we are creating a relationship from product to orders. So I'll call it product orders. So the source is products. If I say something random, it will give me an error saying the products is not defined. Target model name, hit command space, and the target is orders. Relationship type, a product can be a part of multiple orders. So it will be an array. I have to map the fields of source and target. So source products dot id maps onto target orders dot product id, right? And that's it. We have a relationship ready. I can just build this, and this will be a part of my GraphQL API. Right. That's pretty much the gist of autocompletion. At any point, if you're stuck, just hit command space, and you will find help. Right. That's the first improvement. Next, as I said earlier, this whole experience is powered by the language server protocol, and which is why the good news is that we can port it easily to other editors as well. Most editors have a language client as well, right? So the next client that we have added support for is IntelliJ. So because a lot of our users use IntelliJ, so let me show you IntelliJ. It is Java, so it's going to take a while to open up, I think. There you go. Yes. Again, the HTML files have a Hasura icon here, and you can have all the language server features like auto completion, go to definition, the validation errors. Like if I say this, it should show me a red underline. And again, if I ask for auto completion suggestions by hitting control space or command space, it will give me right suggestions. So IntelliJ works. Another unrelated news to this is that we will be open sourcing the language server very soon. So if you have any requirements to add support for other editors, there's also documentation about how to add language clients, how to point this language server to different language clients. So if you have like an urgent requirement, you can add yourself looking at the code, or let us know. We'll help you out with it. Support for multiple editors, that is, we have actively been thinking about it, and we are constantly working on it. So that is IntelliJ. Finally, we have performance improvements in LSP. So typically you will have databases. So when you are bringing in a large data source to Hasura DDN, in serious projects, you would have a large number of models, right? You could have like 300, 400, 500, 1000 models. So this LSP should give you help with that volume of models. Otherwise, then there's no point, right? So we have recently been working on making LSP work seamlessly with large data sources with large number of models. So I have this data source called cost JSON-DB. This has 500 models, right? I will now track all the models from this data source. This data source added to this data connector link. If you see, VSCode is saying that this is a very large file, and some features will be limited and things like that. But LSP handles it quite well. So let's bring in all the collections from this data source, data connector, and say default, and all entities are tracked successfully. So in cost JSON-DB, there's a models directly created. And if you see here, all the 500 models have been brought in. And also the relationships between the models, all of it has been brought in. So like, let's go to one of them and see. This is a model called, this is a model called able, and the object type is called fish. And yeah, all the relationships from able to different models are also auto-generated. Plus, you'll also get all the LSP support in these models. Like for example, if I just say something random, you should get like a red underline saying this fish is not defined, this model is not defined. So all the language server support, you can work with very, very large number of models seamlessly. We are just to point out that all this work that I'm showing right now has not been released yet. We've been iterating quite rapidly on different developer experience fronts. So we're just finishing up the final things, and we'll be releasing out quite soon with beta around the corner. So yeah, these are the improvements that I wanted to show you. Let us know if you have any questions. I'll be there in the chat. If you have any questions, please drop them. And yeah, super excited to launch these features very soon. That's it. Thank you so much.
We did see some good reactions that were coming through though, and Rishi, I could ask a question selfishly. So if IntelliJ is next, what's coming after that? Is NeoVim on the horizon?
What do you think it should be?
I think it should be NeoVim, but I think our community should probably throw an answer into the chat there for what their favorite IDE is, and let us know what they think should be next.
Let's do whatever they think should be next.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Bilal, how are you?
Good. How are you, Rob?
Doing well. Nice little shot of San Francisco there for you.
Yeah.
All right, so you're going to be talking to us today about the OpenAPI integration, which I think is really exciting. I know you do have a recorded demo, and we can go through and look at that, but I'm just going to ask you, kind of put you under the gun. Would you be willing to do a screen share just because we're having the issues with the video quality? Would you be willing to walk through that for us, or would you prefer me to do the recording?
Yeah. So I am open to doing the screen share, but the problem is that we have a very strict time limit that the demo is supposed to go into.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you want to get a little introduction about what we're going to see and what's really being unlocked for everybody by this integration?
Yeah. So the idea is that you have a lot of projects that are already working very well. And how do you get them into the Hasura Supergraph? And you do that very easily without doing a lot of work. And the OpenAPI connector is one massive step towards unlocking that workflow.
Awesome. All right.
Hello, folks. I'm Bilal. I'm an engineer at Hasura, and I will be showing you the OpenAPI connector that we've got. It's very much a work in progress right now, but we still have something that we want to show you. And the reason why we have an OpenAPI connector is that it will allow you to bring in projects that are documented with the OpenAPI spec or the Swagger documentation into your GraphQL API or the Hasura Supergraph that you will have with minimal effort. So let's get into it. So the setup that I have is I've got a very simple API that is running on my computer. It's got these endpoints, and what we want to do is we want to bring these endpoints into the project that we have. So this is a new Hasura project. It's got nothing. It's just I've just written this data connector, but it does not have any commands. It does not have any models. It's essentially a new project. And by the end of the demo, what we want is that the Hasura project, which is going to have a GraphQL API with queries and mutations, should be able to use these APIs somehow. So what we'll do is we'll start the OpenAPI connector that we've got. And we're going to choose alpha because that's in production right now. But basically what we've done is we've given it the location of the documentation file, and we've given it a base URL. And behind the scenes, what the connector is doing right now is it's generating a bunch of files. And the files that we need to really worry about are the api.ts and function.ts files. So api.ts file is basically a TypeScript representation of this documentation. So it's got all the types that are mentioned here, and it's got all the APIs and the endpoints, right? And function.ts has functions that are wrappers over the API calls that are present in api.ts. And the TypeScript Lambda SDK that we have is going to introspect this function.ts file. And these functions are what will be exposed either as queries or mutations in the GraphQL API that will be generated. And the way to tell whether a function is going to be a query or a mutation is via this read-only annotation. So if a function has this read-only annotation, then it's going to be a query. If it does not have that, then it's going to be a mutation. So now that we have the basics set up, the next step that we want to do is we want to bring these functions somehow into the Hasura metadata. So we want to take something that is in TypeScript and make it a part of the HTML files that we've got. And we're going to do that using the TypeScript Lambda connector that we already have. So I'm going to run the connector using npm run watch. And it's started the connector at my local port 8100. And just to see what the connector is doing right now is hit the schema endpoint. And what we can see is that what the connector has done essentially is it looked at this function.ts file and it generated a schema out of it that can be used by the GraphQL API. And the way it knew where the function.ts file is because we ran it in this directory. You can see that it's running in the OS directory where the files were generated. But now that this is done, what we want to do is we want to bring all of this information into the HTML file that we've got. For that, we're going to run refresh data connector. And this is an older workflow that we had. For beta release, all of this is going to be a lot more streamlined. But that refresh data connector command brought all this information into the HTML files for us. And now what we want to do is we want to track everything that's here. So I'm going to do a track all, and the files have been generated for us, and all these functions that were there have been essentially exposed as commands in the metadata. And now that we have the Hasura metadata complete, what we can do is we can create a build and get a working GraphQL API. So we're going to create a build. We're going to do Hasura 3 build create, and we have a console URL. So this console URL So what we can see is that we have a GraphQL API and it's got 2 queries, which is something that we should be able to verify fairly easily by going to function.ts and searching for read-only, and we see that there are 2 instances of it. So we have 2 queries. Let's try a query. Let's get all the authors that we've got. And yeah, so essentially we are hitting these APIs, and we can verify that by running this API here, and we see that it's the same data that is being accessed by this API. We've got time, so we can even try a mutation. Let's create an author email. Let's say abc@abc.xyz. Let's say the ID is 1. I mean, the ID is going to be allocated by the system, but let's say the name is and on these, let's run this, and we have a new author that is created for us. And if we quickly rerun the Swagger thing, we should basically see the new author. We have that here. So yeah, that was the demo. Essentially behind the scenes, behind the scenes, these are the APIs that are being used, and the connector is ensuring that Hasura can access these APIs and use them in its GraphQL API. That was the demo. The final thing that I want to point out is that this is not 100% complete. There are few things that are not supported right now. For example, enums, the NA type, unions, all these things, they are not supported. All these TypeScript types are not supported right now, but they will eventually be supported. We're still working to get there. Cool. That was the demo. Thank you.
Anything you want to add for us there, Bilal?
No, just like Rishi said, even this is something that is not released yet. We are working to get it to a stage where people will be able to try it out very soon.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see about how this is going to unlock a lot of, existing options that are already there for people using OpenAPI. So can't wait to use that with Lambda very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. And folks, again, thanks for your patience with the video issue. We have figured out that you should not use the native video sharing feature inside of Zoom. You should instead share your screen and share audio. So just a heads up if you're doing your own webinar in the future. Next up, we are going to have Puru demonstrating relationships and filters and permissions. And I don't believe he is here with us. If he is, I'll give him a second to come on stage. If he wants to give a quick little introduction. This is a shorter, hey, Puru, there you are. I didn't know you were here.
Yeah, I just joined a few minutes back.
Yeah. How are things?
Yep, good.
Good. Do you want to give us a quick little intro?
Yeah, so this is about the new feature for V3. So that's using relationships for adding filters and permissions. So yeah, the complete demo is there. We have released the feature on prod, so people can try that out.
And just as easy to use as it is in V2, correct?
Yeah. Hi everyone, this is Puru. I am a software engineer at Hasura, and today I will be showcasing you about our new feature, that is relationship in filters and permissions. So what's the use case of this feature in real life applications? So this feature allows for streamlined data access, and the user can filter data across different models. It also allows leveraging the power of relationships for data filtering, so that there is no need for any post-processing of the data, and the filtered data is done at the Hasura layer itself. It allows for granular access of data so that specific users can access data that is relevant to them. So from all these points, we can say that this features helps in preventing manual data filtering, and using the permissions, the data security and integrity is ensured. So how is our approach different from traditional server frameworks? So first one is that there is no need to write any custom views for different use cases for filtering and permissions, which is generally the case with ORMs like Django that are available in the market. So this also helps us in decouple the business logic from the data access layer. And this pattern is easy to maintain and write APIs. Our approach also enhances the developer experience, so that the developer, they don't have to handle the low level data tasks and they can focus mainly on building new features. These features come directly on top of the database layer, so using the power of relationships, the data can be efficiently accessed and manipulated. How is our approach simpler and more performant? So we do not make multiple queries to the database and then process them at the Hasura layer. We simply make one SQL query, apply all the filters and permissions in there, and then make that query to the database. So it's simply a single query which handles all the cases directly. So that's why it's very performant. So now I will be giving you a small demo for the two features that we have seen. So here I already have a database which has 6 models. So they are track, album, user, product, vendor, and artist. So album and track are connected via relationship, and similarly product and vendor are connected, and vendor and user are connected. So for our first query, so here we will filter all the albums where there is a track whose name starts with the string the. So if we make this query, okay, so here it returns one album, and there is a track in that album which starts with the string the over here. So for the permissions part, we have another query. So basically this query is made for a Hasura role called user, and we also send the Hasura user ID along with it. So here I have the HTML file for the same model, user model, and here I have already defined a model permission for the role user. So the user can only view the products which are relevant to them via the relationships for vendors. So from product to vendors and from vendors to users, we can we are applying the permission over here. So here I am sending the user ID as 1. So the products which are created by user with the user ID 1, only those will be shown in the query. So if we run this query, Okay, so here we can see that this is the first product with product ID 1, and there is user 1 who created it. Similarly, for product ID 4, there's also the user 1 who created it over here. Now, if we run it for user ID 2, yeah, so now we can see that this product ID 2 was created by the user ID 2. So here multiple users are coming up because from the vendors and users relationship, it's getting the vendor ID 2, which has both of these users. But actually the product is created by user ID 2. It's relevant to user ID 2. So that's all for this demo. Thank you.
Excellent. Anything you want to share with us?
So I found this like very interesting feature to work with based on some other models, so which is like very useful. So yep, I think users will find the same.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, next up, I think, let me check my list here. We had 2 more demos that are coming up, and then we're going to have a few live in-person experiences that are going to be happening, including an AMA with Tanmai, our CEO. But next up, we are looking at doing custom mutations with native queries or native SQL.
I'm going to talk a little bit today about the feature my team's been working on, which is called native mutations. So I work in the NDC EU team, the European half of the NDC teams. And what we do is we look after the process from when V3 Engine has determined the structure of a query according to our open source NDC spec, and how to translate that query into native SQL, let's say for a Postgres backend, or an API call for a REST or an OData backend, or whatever else we want to do. So generally what we do when you provide us with the URL to a, let's say, Postgres database for the sake of argument, is we introspect that database, and from that we generate some standard queries and mutations. So for example, if your database has an artists table in it, as mine does, you will get a couple queries just generated automatically. One is just a general select rows from the artist table. You can filter these, aggregate them, whatever else. And another is select by primary key. So out of the box, without doing anything to the metadata, you already get some kind of basic functionality. However, as time goes on, you might find out that perhaps you don't necessarily want to expose your database schema to the end user, either because it would be more intuitive or useful for them to have a slightly less normalized view, or you want to make changes to your schema. You want to evolve your schema, and so you want to keep a buffer between what the user's interacting with and what the database is doing to allow these things to change individually. So when you want to do this, we have a feature called native queries and native mutations. And in essence, if we look at the metadata for a native mutation, we can see that all we're really doing is saying, I have this particular mutation that I want to expose in the GraphQL schema. This mutation has a couple arguments. So here we have ID and name, and they have these types. So this allows us to give it a type in the GraphQL schema that we can expose to users. And now when they call that mutation in the GraphQL schema, we can convert that internally to a procedure call that will run this query. You'll notice that this query returns star. The reason we do this is so that we can query the affected rows. So not only can we tell you how many rows were affected by a particular update or procedure, but we can also tell you what changed. You can query the individual fields in the returned values. So you get, the standard sort of features you'd expect from Postgres returning clauses. So right now, this is a bit of a work in progress. This is all through the metadata, but we can see this working quite happily if we take this mutation here. So this is a procedure call to insert artist, and I want to add a new artist called Tom's New Band, ID 1000. So I'll go ahead and run that, and we can see there's one affected row. That's all I asked for, the number of affected rows. And indeed, if we go over to here and run this query now, we'll see Tom's new band. So as I say, right now, this is a bit of a work in progress. Currently, we've built the NDC protocol for it, so you can implement this in your own custom connectors. We are currently building out the rest of the feature, which includes a sort of graphical front end to this, exposing it properly through the GraphQL API, and other things like permissions. So this is very much a developer preview, but I hope this gives you some idea about where we're going and the sort of use cases we'll be able to support in future. So thanks very much for listening, and have a good one.
Always good to see someone still using Postman, and looking forward to seeing Tom's new band drop their next banger. All right, switching gears for a little bit, I'm going to invite Tristan up on the stage, who's already ready to go. We're going to be talking about our GPT-powered support bot that's available inside of Discord. Tristan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Rob, and I am excited as always. I feel like I'm kind of becoming a regular here.
I would say so, yeah.
Talked to
Get
you a few
punch card.
times now. We've got something pretty cool. So this is actually live in our Discord server. So it was funny. I saw someone unexpectedly talk to it for the first time just the other day. Just we linked it to our existing help forum. So I think it's going to be really cool, and all the code is open source. I'll go ahead and drop a link to the GitHub repo, and I also wrote a blog post in the README. So if there's anyone nerdy who wants to check that out. But
yo, what's up? Tristan here. I'm a community engineer at Hasura, and today I want to teach you how to use the Hasura Discord support bot. This bot allows you to chat with Hasura's technical documentation, and it currently lives in our Discord server. The goal is to turn this bot into a librarian of sorts, capable of both assisting users, but also learning from them, so it can offer better assistance in the future. This bot will be most useful when asked questions that have solutions somewhere in our technical documentation. But over time, it will also learn from the conversations it has had. The conversations with this bot will also help our documentation team to more easily identify gaps in our docs. In theory, once everything about Hasura is fully 100% documented, this bot will be able to answer any question. Well, at least one can hope. So let's see how it works. I'll start by asking the bot a simple question about Hasura v3 and the Hasura Data Delivery Network. Why is Hasura building DDN? And let's just ask it why. It might take a minute for the bot to do its thing, and that's because we're powering it with GPT-4 from OpenAI. We opted for quality over speed because we want to provide the best support we can. We're also taking advantage of the 120,000 token context window and feeding up to 40,000 tokens of background documentation to the bot as input pulled directly from our technical docs. We're currently using OpenAI's latest text embedding 3 large model and storing the vectors and documentation in the Quadrant Vector database. If you want to peek under the hood of this bot, you should check out the blog post I wrote that talks about how I built the bot, and since all the code is open source, you can also run it yourself. There's 3 parts to this thread. The first message is the thread's controller message. The author can vote on the message to mark the thread as solved, or vote if the message misses the mark. If the author votes on the thread with the check mark, it'll mark the answer as solved. The second part of this thread is the generated answer. I won't read the entire answer aloud, but I will say at first glance it looks pretty spot on, which makes sense considering this question is directly addressed in our technical documentation. And I actually handpicked it for precisely that reason. When you think of this bot as a librarian or a tool that curates information and provides sources, it's really helpful. I haven't yet fine-tuned the bot, but once we start collecting some data and people start voting on threads, I'll revisit this. The last part of the bot's generated message is a link to the sources for the documentation that was provided to the bot that it used to generate its response. To generate another answer from this bot, or continue the conversation, simply ping the bot. and continue conversing. Tell me more, let's say. Keep in mind, the goal of this bot isn't to replace assistance from a real person. It's to provide a first pass at a possible solution with links to the most relevant technical documentation available, which at the very least is likely to serve as a better jumping off point for the person asking the question, and in some ways function as a rubber duck. The hope is that if the bot goes down the wrong direction because the question was vague or poorly worded, it'll encourage the person asking the question to clarify what they meant. And in the long run, this will make it easier for a member of our community or staff to more quickly assist our users. While the support bot won't always be right, every question that it does provide an accurate answer for will free up more time for the support staff to solve the questions that the bot misses the mark on. You can check the status of a thread by using the /status command. Users with the bot's moderator role, which in this case means any user who's a member of Hasura's staff, have the ability to mark the threads as solved, close the threads, reopen closed threads, and mark threads that were solved as no longer being solved, in case a thread ever needs an updated answer. They would do that with solve, unsolve, close, or open. Another useful command is the search command. This is useful when you'd rather just get a link to the most relevant documentation about your query. You can see all of the collections available to search by using the /collections command. And this will give you a drop-down of the different collections that you can search the documentation for. From there, you can perform a search for the most relevant documentation using /search. And then you fill in your query. Tell me about the CLI. And you pick a collection, we'll say V3, and you get your links. If you ever forget the commands you can use with the bot, you can use the /commands command to get a reminder. That wraps up an overview of the Hasura Discord support bot. I hope you find this bot useful and that it helps you get shit done.
Tristan,
Well, there
thanks
we
so
go,
much.
Rob.
Yeah, excited to see that
yeah.
in action.
Please, everybody, go try it out. Our Discord server, I'll drop a link, but would love to have some other people give it a go.
We've had a couple of internal GIFs floating around that maybe we need to have like a /Easter egg command on there for
Oh, for sure.
some
Just tell me
fun.
what we need.
Yeah. All right, we'll make it happen. Or maybe somebody can open a PR since it's open source, right?
It is open source, yeah. So open
Yeah,
to
there you
PR,
go.
add some fun stuff in.
All right, cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
All right, next up, get to talk to people, bring them up in person as opposed to playing recordings. David, go ahead and come up on stage. Let's talk about bashing the backlog. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, can I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're all very excited about V3. We've seen a bunch of cool demos. We hope you're all very excited too. I know I am. And just looking forward, there's a lot of activity on our community, on our GitHub repo, filing issues. And just wanted to talk about, what's been kind of going on and how we're thinking about incorporating them into V3. I just wanted to go over some of the stuff that we know is that you guys have been talking to us about and encourage you to get involved in the community. We already have addressed some examples of issues that have been brought up. And looking forward, there are some other issues that we're looking forward to. So we know allowing relationships on triggers and also native queries is something that's a near and dear feature to me. I'm excited to have it be part of Hasura V3. So it's on our roadmap. We're working on it, allowing to reuse existing types for actions. As you've seen with the LSP, we're already working on the ergonomics of managing a large number of models and reusing types and stuff like that. So not all of these issues are going to be addressed directly. Some of them are going to be nuances in how we address them. So as we release, you might see comments like this come up on issues where we talk about how we see this being solved in V3, and we really encourage you to give us direct and honest feedback. We really want to hear fast and furiously from you about whether or not the way we're solving these issues in V3 directly impact you and make your lives better while using Hasura. Some of the other things, so please in the comments for the video chat, add your favorite feature that you'd like to see solved in V3. Please add comments to them asking whether this is going to be solved in V3 and how it's going to be solved in V3. We know I've added some examples here. Updating nested objects is something that technically can be done using the native query feature that was demoed earlier in this call. And as was mentioned during that demo, we're looking to improve that feature. But if you have thoughts about how we should solve it, it's a very fruitful conversation on that thread. Please add your thoughts. Group by support is another one that we're looking to add in V3 at some point in the future, and we already have like RFC that kind of describes how we thought about solving that. And then kind of other GraphQL features like deprecating fields or other things we're hoping that. So please continue to be active in the community, add your thoughts to these chats here, and we'll put them on the backlog and let you know when we think they're going to be coming as we release V3. The other thing, oldest joke in the book, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Postgres. It's our favorite database. I think that's the 100th time I've used that joke. So thanks for bearing with me. But I just want to express that if you're using one of these Postgres flavors, we've made sure that V3 works seamlessly with these Postgres flavors that we've listed here. We're also in the process of confirming, and we don't see any reason why V3 wouldn't work with other kind of Postgres cloud offerings like Crunchy Data and Neon. But other kind of nuanced flavors like Yugabyte and CockroachDB and Citus, we've made sure that our V3 solution is working with those. So if you have any concerns about a flavor that wasn't mentioned in our V2 documentation, please bring it up, and I'll make sure that we seamlessly integrate with it. Looking forward, we have a lot of data connectors coming soon. This is kind of you can come here to this URL to see what's on our roadmap, and then anything else, please file like a GitHub issue if you don't see it on our radar anywhere, and we'll keep you up to date that way. But we see coming very soon in March, the MongoDB, MySQL, Snowflake, Oracle being added, as well as these other databases being added very shortly after. So if you're not using Postgres or your database isn't listed here, please add it in the comments in the chat around the community, and we'll make sure to get back to you.
That's exciting to see all those databases coming very soon. David, I haven't heard your elephant in the room joke before. I don't know how after all these months working together, but have you heard the one about version control?
No, how does that one go?
You probably wouldn't get it.
Yeah,
there we go. All right.
Always good. Rob always has better jokes than me.
I don't know about that. All right, thanks, David. All right, Tanmai, come on up on stage.
Hey, how are you?
All right. This is our AMA section for Tanmai folks. So if you have any questions, they can be, obviously, we would think about things related to Hasura, DDN, V3, but if you want to know his favorite color, favorite sushi roll, whatever it may be, go ahead and throw it out there. And I was asked to start things off just before the questions start pouring in. So I have kind of an open-ended question. What are you most looking forward to about DDN?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's a pretty loaded question as well because it's not there, right? So the last time when I was kind of talking about DDN and reviewing DDN, right, I mentioned one of those kind of core key change in V3 and DDN that is kind of the underlying building block that powers all of the features that you see, right? And that building block is essentially the change in the way that we handle metadata. So instead of metadata being inside a database, and that being dynamic, now that metadata is more like configuration that is provided to a Hasura at startup, right? This separates out the build time part of Hasura from the runtime part of Hasura and allows for a lot of things, but especially kind of on the operational side, much lower latency, much better, much like near sub-millisecond startup times, all of that, right? So a lot of operational amazingness kind of comes in from that core fact, right? And a lot of the stuff that we talk about is essentially kind of derivatives of those things. I think the thing that I'm the most excited about when it comes to V3D and kind of other than that and other than that code change is the way that in Hasura V1 and V2, we introspected databases and data models and allowed you to kind of create and bootstrap the creation of a GraphQL API on top of that, right? So it was kind of like instant GraphQL on data, right? So you had a database and you said, I have articles and authors, and we looked at that and we gave you a GraphQL schema that was extremely powerful, right? It's if you look at the Hasura GraphQL API versus say a GraphQL API that you'd use a framework to auto-generate those resolvers, it's very different. You with Hasura, you can filter article by the author's property, right? Which is awesome, which is so useful. You can do top-end queries, which are very hard to do if you have like if you're not query compiling and stuff like that. With V3, the building block that we have is instant GraphQL on code, which is what I find awesome as something that I think unlocks just a lot of possibilities, right? So just like we introspect data, now you can introspect functions. And so a big part of the conversation that's happening on chat as well is we're kind of talking about TypeScript connectors and TypeScript functions, right? So if you look at how the TypeScript connector works, it's the same idea, right? You just like we introspected a table and figured out like these are the things we can do, you can then kind of go and introspect a TypeScript function and say, hey, this is how it should come up in a GraphQL schema eventually, right? We can do that for TypeScript. I was talking to Tristan a few weeks ago. We can do that for Python with Pydantic, right? You can do that for Java. You can do that for, I think, I was talking to someone in the team and they hacked out a version with Go. So, you just write a Go function, bam, it's in your GraphQL API. It's the schema's taken care of. You're not doing all of these type shenanigans and whatnot. It becomes particularly exciting, I think, when we think about frameworks like Nest.js or Java Spring Boot, for example, right? Like, imagine you have like a Spring Boot API or a TypeScript Express API or something like that. It's already done, without any work. You just introspect them and it kind of comes in. So like that ability to introspect code and not just data, I feel like that's it's cool. Like it's very cool. Like there's a amazing amount of things that you can do with that kind of building block, just like what we did with data. So yeah, that's what I'm most pumped about.
Yeah. Seems like we have a couple of questions that are coming in. One that's starting things off is about the migration from V2 to V3 and what that's going to be like. Do you want to talk about that quickly?
Yeah, for sure. So the V2 to V3 migration is something that we're actively working on. I think our time frame that we're thinking about is sometime during Hasura Con this year is when we want to kind of have near full parity for you to upgrade easily. And I think Rahul, one of the folks on the team, is working on, and Lyndon, these are the two folks who are kind of spearheading the migration tooling. So there's kind of a V2 to V3 upgrade tool that will help you do the upgrade. So the upgrade path is going to require some time. I would say that you'll need maybe like you maybe want to take out a day or so for doing the upgrade. And the way it would work is that you kind of take your upgrade tool, you'd run it against your existing Hasura instance, right? And metadata. And what that will do is that will kind of modify the metadata from the old format into the metadata for the new format. So we kind of do like a code mod where we switch that over into the new metadata format. So that's the first piece that you'll have to upgrade. The second piece that you'll have to upgrade is you'll have to just think about where you want to run Hasura, right? Because with V3, the place that we want to kind of make super efficient and scalable and cheaper than any other option that you have is running it on DDN, right? Where at the low at low scale, DDN pricing should be similar to what you'd get on DigitalOcean. At high scale, it should be like 10x cheaper. But sometimes you don't want to run it on a DDN. You want to run it yourself, or you want to run it locally, or you want to keep it running where it is and not touch it, right? So when you kind of that piece, you'd upgrade your kind of existing V3 engine that you like your V2 engine that you have. Your V2 engine would become a connector. So your V2 engine would just get upgraded to a Postgres connector. Instead of it being a V2 engine, your Docker image there would get upgraded to a connector. And then you can run DDN. You can run against DDN, which is one format of running it. The other format of running it is that you can run the whole thing existing. You can run that locally as well. You can just run that with Docker, both V3 engine, etc., and whatnot. So, V3 engine and the Postgres connector, you can run all of that wherever you're running V2 right now. So those are the two things to work through. And the tool should help you make sure that you're able to get the metadata mod running. You just have to follow the docs for where you want to choose how to change the deployment model if you want to change it at all. All options should be relatively seamless. And I think the kind of there are bits that are different in V3 fundamentally from the way that we do it in things in V2. And those bits are particularly things like actions or remote schemas. So for example, actions, you'll have actions that won't have a GraphQL type definition anymore, but will have a TypeScript definition now, because we're introspecting the TypeScript function to do the same thing. So again, the tool will kind of help you do that migration. And maybe you just want to eyeball that once, sign off on it, type check, compile, and deploy. So reserve about a day, and that would help you do the upgrade. It's unfortunately not like a fully automated 30-second process, but you will be able to migrate automatically, and it should not take like 6 months of your time.
Got it. There's another question here about moving from V2 to V3, and it's asking if there's going to be a metadata API available in V3 as there was in V2.
Correct, exactly, right. So that's yes, in a slightly different way though. So you'll have something better than the metadata API, so that you can do everything via you can do everything via code, you can do everything via CLI. We aren't introducing a lot of console features for metadata authoring upfront because the CLI will have all of those features, and LSP already has some of those features, right? But the idea is that instead of kind of so here's kind of one of the experiences that we're targeting that hopefully we'll be able to show off kind of next time or sometime soon. The console experience today on V2 is you kind of go into the console, right? And you say, hey, add a database, and you add a Postgres URL. And then you're like, track table, track relationships, boom, right? API, which is awesome. What we want to do is bring that experience onto the CLI. So what you can do is you can say, Hasura Postgres wizard. And then just like the console flow, you have like the CLI flow that will say, hey, give me a Postgres URL. You put in your Postgres URL, say like, hey, I found like 1,000 tables. Go. You're like, yes, go. I found like, 50 relationships, possible relationships, go. Yes, just bang it in and done, right? And then when you want to iterate on that, you can just look at your metadata and iterate on it, and LSP will give you the same kind of autocomplete that console gave you and stuff like that. So that's the kind of change in experience. The idea is to keep the ease that you got on console, but to make kind of the more complex workflows and some of the CI/CD stuff, some of the team collaboration, version control stuff a lot easier. That's kind of the benefit that you get with that metadata being more explicit. Yeah, so that's the long answer to Pataki, your short question.
I look forward to that day when I never have to leave my terminal to do anything. That'll be wonderful. Let's see. There's one that's a little bit more general. It's just talking about how we're looking for feedback. It's saying regarding GitHub issues or comments or adding, emojis to issues more useful for the Hasura team to gauge interest.
So it is extremely, extremely helpful. Please do. And I know that we've been a little bit slow on GitHub, but we're speeding up, and you're seeing kind of like a bunch of those things get shipped pretty quickly. So please pass in your comments, give us information. Like at a bare minimum, just go in and put an emoji. That's super helpful. And especially if you're kind of watching for it, like watch the issue, subscribe on the issue and stuff like that. But also, this is my version of like and subscribe. But yes, please do like and subscribe that issue. I think if you can put in details about your use case as a comment, what this will enable for you, that also helps us give us more information on prioritizing it, right? If we can understand why this is useful to you and why this would be useful to other people, right? The more people it impacts, the more it helps us prioritize. So that information is great.
I think we probably have time for one more question, and it came in the Q&A section, and it may be a little bit of a misconception around how things are being handled in V3 with regard to migrations. So it says, will there be some breaking changes to the database migrations? Do you want to talk about how we're doing migrations in V3 compared to V2?
Yeah, so we're separating out we're separating out the migration tooling for V3. So it's no longer explicitly a part of like your V2 metadata management. So it stands alone separately as a migration tool by its side, where you can just do the same migrate up, migrate down. You can use any other migration tooling as well. And that's kind of the feedback that we got from a lot of our users, especially in kind of like more brownfield situations where, like in enterprise, for example, or in a situation where you already have an existing app, you have maybe Rails's migration system or Java migration system or something like that that's already running, Django and stuff like that. They have great migration tooling. So you can continue to use that. You can continue to use Hasura's migration tooling as is, and that'll kind of sit outside the metadata tooling. So we've just kind of decoupled that. Shouldn't be any breaking changes. You should just be able to use it the way it is. Yeah, that's the quick answer there.
Awesome. Anything you want to say in parting before we shift to the next part of our call here?
No, I think that's all I had. Thanks, folks. Thanks for having me, Rob.
Thanks so much for coming on. All right, everybody. So just to wrap things up here, we do have our next community call coming up on March 28th, but it's a bit of a more special version. We're calling this Hasura Dev Day, and that's because we're going to be debuting the beta version of Hasura V3 or Hasura DDN. So we hope that you come. We hope that you get to see everything that's going to be in beta. It's really exciting to see all the work that's been coming together over the past several months and really start to see what this new experience is going to be like for you as end users. We are accepting talks for HasuraCon 2024, so the CFP is up there. You can hit that QR code, or you can go to the HasuraCon website. I think we have banners throughout most of our domains. So anywhere you go to hasura.io, you should see information about HasuraCon and can easily and quickly submit your talk. We'd love to hear how you're using Hasura in the wild. Additionally, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. PST, we have Discord office hours. You can come join folks like Tristan, Praveen, Rahul, myself, and either get help on whatever it is that you're doing with regard to Hasura, or just talk about some cool things that you're building. We'd love to come and talk with you as well. We have Google Cloud Next coming up. We will be there in Las Vegas at the beginning of April. There will be a lot of us there. We'll be on the convention floor and throughout different sessions. So if you want to meet us in person or just come say hi, learn more about what's happening, please come see us there. We had Rishi's demonstration back at the beginning of the call, and it was a little bit blurry. So when we finish this up here in just a second, I'm going to go ahead and play that. If you want to stick around because it was hard to see in the beginning, I'll play that in its entirety and then I'll end the call. Otherwise, you can go ahead and hop off, and you can always catch this online. My bad, Rahul, I forgot we have a user group meetup number 3 coming in San Francisco. He's going to be talking about supercharging your microservice development with Hasura. You can scan the QR code there to go ahead and find more information about the event. And then we can see all the details that are down there at the bottom as well. I'll hang on here for a second just in case Rahul decides to come on and say something. But if he doesn't, it's no big deal. I know he's here. He may have left by this point. That's all right. All right. As always, we are looking for feedback, so you can hit us up in a number of different ways, and those options are all provided right there. We're also always looking for community call demos, so if you'd like to demo something you built with Hasura in the community call, please let us know as well. We will see you folks at Dev Day next month.